Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Am I easily audible at the end of the hall? Okay, good. It's wonderful to be here in Cotton University for a conversation which I think is both simple and profound. Our session today is From Seed to Forest, Stories of Growth, Restoration and Belonging. And really that is what regeneration is. Not a grand project, but something that begins quietly with small acts, small decisions, small relationships. A forest never grows because one tree succeeded. It grows because many roots, stories and hands all come together. So today we explore how communities and landscapes grow together, heal together, and belong to each other. Regeneration is not just ecological, it's emotional, it's cultural, it's about identity and dignity, and it's about how people see themselves in relation to their land, and how that relationship strengthens resilience in moments of uncertainty. We have with us today a remarkable group of speakers, each carrying a different lens into this theme. Community development and what true ownership looks like on the ground. And for that, we have Ms. Rupa Davani on my left. Rupa is the head of Water, Environment and Sanitation at JSW Foundation, Mumbai, a position she has held since April 2016. She brings extensive experience in environmental sciences and corporate responsibility, focusing on sustainable water management, sanitation, and environmental conservation projects. On my right is Richard Milburn. Richard is the scholar at King's College London, United Kingdom. He is a scholar and teacher at King's College, specializing in environmental security, conservation, and the links between biodiversity loss, armed conflict, and sustainability. He's a part-time lecturer in the Department of War Studies and leads Marjan Research Group, focusing on armed conflict and environmental interactions using a war-first approach. Mr. Rajiv KG, on my extreme right, is Senior General Manager at Tata Consumer Products Limited. He has been associated with Tata Coffee Limited, a part of Tata Consumer Products, for over 3 decades, specifically working in diversification, research, and development, and bought coffee operations in Kodagu, Karnataka. He has also been recognized for his commitment to sustainability and responsible practices within the company. We await the arrival of Banu Haralu. Is a veteran journalist turned conservationist and the project lead for the Nagaland Rights and Communities team at Wildlife Conservation Society, India. She was instrumental in wildlife conservation efforts in Nagaland, notably saving the migratory Amur falcon from mass slaughter near the Doyang Reservoir. Banu founded the Nagaland Wildlife and Biodiversity Conservation Trust in 2013, which focuses on wildlife education and conservation in the state. I thought it was important to acquaint you with the kind of background and the nature of work that each of very distinguished panelists have done, so that you understand from where they are coming and you can connect with them. I also have to say that in this session, I expect a great deal of interaction with our young scholars, students of the college here, That is the reason why we are here, and therefore we'll keep our question answers quite flowing, fast, and provide enough time for question answers from you in the audience to be thrown at each of the panelists here. So let me, without further ado, begin, and let's begin with curiosity, with openness, and with the belief that a seed of insight planted today might just become a forest tomorrow. So let me reach Rupa for the first question. Rupa, you've worked deeply with communities on water, land, and environmental programs. What does meaningful community ownership look like in restoration, and what helps or hinders that ownership?
Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Balipara Foundation, for inviting me here. It's a great honor, and it's really nice to see the youngsters, as Indranil says, they are the future of the world. I wouldn't say the country. We are talking about globalization here. So his question is, what I would call, what would be meaningful when you talk about community ownership. Like he said, I work with the JSW Foundation. The JSW Foundation is instrumental in implementing the CSR projects across the country. Since JSW is a manufacturing setup, we have the good fortune, opportunity of working with the communities that live around the plants. And now our geography stretches from Jammu and Kashmir to Tamil Nadu, from Rajasthan to the northeastern states. Now we are fortunately working in 3 or 4 northeastern states. And our insights are varied. The amount of knowledge we gain from the community, we go there thinking, if we go there thinking we know all, I think we've lost it then and there. When we begin interacting with the communities, we go with an open mind. We just go there to listen to what their stories are. The minute you do that, the minute you go with an open mind, open heart, open ears, I think you've half your battle is won there. So looking at their involvement, it's best to go there, interact with them, ask them what the problem, you define the problem, look at what their responses are, and then involve them in the decision making, the whole process. I think there we win everything. That's where the communities get involved. That's where they feel that they own the whole process. When you're talking about restoration here, I can give you an example of mangroves restoration in Raigad in Maharashtra. I'm from the state of Maharashtra. We have a complete long coastal area where we have mangroves from beginning of the northernmost tip of Maharashtra to the southernmost where we join Goa. We have Dr. Kishore Ite here from BNHS. They also know how much work has been done and how much work needs to be done. All of us have heard what happened in the 2004 tsunami and how the mangroves have been instrumental in actually saving or not saving communities that live around the coast. So when we began working, our problem statement was different. We didn't begin directly working with conservation of mangroves. We went there because we heard that their fields were getting inundated with salt water, with the saline water. And then we said, why? Because the mangroves were destroyed. And that's where they came up telling us what the stories are. We work with self-help group women. We formed self-help groups, women working there. They came out, they told us how we can do it. And we just went on replicating. So here's my, the direct, consequences of listening to the community, working with them, and then our project. As we progress, I can give you all more information, insights of how the project has progressed and where it is now. So I think I'll now pass on because I can go on and on otherwise on this topic.
Thank you very much. I think you made some very important points, and we'll certainly revisit that. Richard, from your work on environmental security, how does ecological restoration strengthen social stability and resilience in fragile regions like the Eastern Himalayas?
Yeah, thanks, Indranil. So I think there's 3 key areas that I'd identify. So what's been spoken about quite a lot already is that disaster risk reduction piece. So you give people that greater stability. I was at an event in Dehradun about 10 years ago, with the Indian government talking about this issue, that conservation and ecological solutions often are the cheapest and most effective way to reduce that disaster risk, both the quantity of disasters and also the severity. So there's a very natural process to reduce disaster risk. And then the key livelihoods and basic necessities that people need, that the environment can provide. And that's everything from water to agricultural land, soil quality, through to other options, potentially tourism or small businesses. And social enterprises. And then I think there's a third kind of growing opportunity, which is for commercial solutions to conservation. So at the moment it's often more lucrative to exploit the environment than protect it, but we're starting to see a lot of transition, a lot more markets opening up for conservation, be that carbon credits, biodiversity credits, or more commercial solutions such as sort of coffee, tea, that's wildlife friendly or conservation friendly. So I think those three key areas, and then by delivering those three elements, you then reduce the risk of tensions, or you reduce the risk of conflict breaking out between communities. So it gives that fundamental sort of safety and security and resilience. Whereas if you lose that, then that can really increase tensions, and particularly if there's tensions between groups or countries, if you then lose those basic livelihoods, that's when the risk of conflict grows.
Welcome, Banu. We've already introduced you, and we've had just the first round of questions and answers have started. That's Rupa Devani, Richard Milburn, and Rajiv Keji. Rajiv, how is Tata Consumer embedding regenerative agricultural practices and ecological stewardship in the landscapes where it operates, especially those linked to tea, spices, and smallholder communities?
Well, good morning everybody, and thank you Balipara for this opportunity. TCPL in its plantations, say Tata Coffee Limited, down south, practices traditional practices, marrying it with modern technology. When I say traditional practices, these are all time-tested and proven practices with the intention and commitment to protect and conserve basic elements of biodiversity. Say when I say basic elements, be it soil, water, flora and fauna. These four things are interlinked, and whatever practice you execute on the field, in the plantations, that will definitely go a long way. There are plethora of practices which are done. So let me take an example of soil first. First of all, I would like to inform, our coffee is grown under shade. When I say shade, we have close to 40 to 50 trees per acre, all basically focusing on planting native species, which is our future. Though we have some exotic varieties that would meet the commercial requirement, but focus on native species planting is the key. So when I say shade grown coffee, quality of coffee also is good. Intrinsic quality will improve because of the shade. And the leaf litter what drops down adds to the soil organic matter, thereby conserving moisture, enriching the soil status. That is the thing. Number two, in soil, in order to avoid erosion, intercropping could be done. The cover cropping could be done, which protects the soil from eroding. Cradle pits are dug so that you, especially in the area which is having a gradual to steep slopes. Because we have because South Kodagu being rainfall area, there would be erosion. So these cradle pits help in reducing erosion, and the fills what you have throughout the year is used to clean back, and it's plowed back to the field where exposed roots of the plants are getting covered. So these are some of the important practices as far as soil is concerned. And again, when we say coffee plantation or tea plantation, fertilizer application is another very, very important calendar of operation. So fertilizer application also is done based on the soil analysis test. So every year soil is analyzed for its nutrient status and pH, and based on that pH is corrected by way of lime application judiciously, and fertilizer application also is done. For example, Karnataka soils are very rich in phosphorus, so you need not apply P blindly, so that you could reduce, which also adds to some savings which could be generated in terms of input cost. And today's input costs, you know, it's all skyrocketing, especially the fertilizer costs and along with labor wages also. So sustainability is the key in terms of what sort of inputs we give in terms of cultivation of crops. That is as far as soil is concerned. Coming to water, entire runoff water, because you know the terrain, how coffee and tea is grown. The runoff water could be collected at strategic points where GPS survey is done, and at strategic points artificial tanks are dug. So this water is harvested there and kept. And you know, for forcing out blossom, which will be the prospect of future year in coffee, we need to do overhead irrigation and force out the blossom, which turns into crop later. So these water, and we don't use any tube well water for irrigation. Tube well water or bore well water or open well water is used only for domestic purposes. Otherwise, only these runoff water are harvested properly in strategic point tanks and then used for irrigation. And these water are also tested for its pH every year, and from the entry point to the estate and getting out, the water is tested, so that we need to know whether we are also contaminating our water in terms of various other operations. So we make sure that whether what sort of contamination happens in our water. So that is number 2. And usage of water also by installing eco-friendly pulping practices. Machineries are introduced, having some indigenous fabricators, which matches, you know, we have both the Brazilian and Colombian technology being used in pulping of fruits, that is the processing of coffee on harvest. So indigenous technology also is used here because aftercare services is much better here. So when that sort of thing is done, eco-friendly pulper machines are introduced. Our water consumption per kg of coffee processed has come down from almost 5 liters, 6 liters to almost 1.5 liters today. So that is the need of the hour again. Because today when you hear me, we spend close to 130 liters of water to produce a kg of coffee. So it's very nice to sip a cup of coffee, but the amount of water we lose is 135 liters. We are working on it on a continuous basis to see that it comes down drastically. So these are some of the operations on these two, and flora and fauna, I think we'll come back again. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Rajiv. Very insightful. Banu, coming to you, indigenous relationships with land run very deep. How do we protect and strengthen these cultural connections as part of ecological restoration?
Thank you and good morning. I really apologize for my delay. So this question about indigenous relationship and connection with land, it's changing so fast. And so the contrary to popular belief that indigenous people have much connection with their land and they are strengthened in their conservation efforts, on the ground there is a fast growing disconnect with the land and the landscape, primarily because a lot of the indigenous cultures and people and communities are governed by policies and agricultural policies which have no direct impact or understanding of their immediate situation and circumstances. So in my work for the last 15 to 18 years with communities, particularly in Nagaland, I find that the younger generation have very little connect with the landscape. And so it's been our effort to reconnect people, the village council leaders also, with their land through participatory involvement in conservation initiatives, and also retelling of stories of old, and to understand the landscape that they are in. What is the history? What are the stories? What are the names of the animals, the birds, the plants? What are the uses? When are the seasons of cultivation? When is the season for harvest? What are the medicinal plants? All these things are so fast disappearing because there is, as we all know, a migration from the rural areas to urban centers for further education as well as for jobs, employment. And so very little is being done, in fact, in the rural areas to build up the economy through sustainable interventions. So I think indigenous cultures, like the elders, we still have, fortunately, a generation of people who are who have inherited the legacy of the land and the landscape, and they are our knowledge keepers, and we really need to connect with them through all conservation initiatives and bring them into the center and their stories be told again.
Very, very compelling ideas and concepts, and something that we really need to take forward in this whole restoration scheme. Coming back to you, Rupa, you made the point that it is in fact by keeping things very co-creative, letting people really understand or be able to participate in decision making, that you can really make things come alive for the future. May I request a short example where a community process or decision fundamentally reshaped the outcome of this?
Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity again to talk about the project that I mentioned earlier. So this is a mangroves restoration project in Raigad district, Maharashtra, where the problem statement that came to us was salt ingression in the farmlands. And then when we tried to go to the root of the cause, we realized it was the degradation, the destroy of mangroves, which were acting as sentinels, which were stopping the ingress when the high tide came in. And of course, with so-called development of progress of the area, this area is very close to Mumbai, the metropolitan city. By road, it's 90 kilometers. By the water route, it's likely hardly maybe 20-30 knots, so it's very easily accessible. So the so-called progress happening there, a lot of waterways being developed, industry coming up. JSW has a big plant, very big plant there. That's when we realized that we need to work on conservation of mangroves. Fortunately, I'm in a state where the forest department has identified, Maharashtra government was the first one to classify mangroves as forests and not as wasteland, as it happened all over the country. So we were fortunate that we had the backing of the systems, the government also there. We worked closely with the forest department. And then when we spoke to the communities, we realized, as she says, a lot of indigenous knowledge. They already know what to do. They lack resources. So the minute they have little help from like-minded people who are ready to help them, I think it creates a lot of difference. We identified self-help groups, we formed self-help groups, we identified women who had never stepped out of their homes to even think about, earning money or stuff like that. It's always left to the males, and then they migrate, they'll go around. So you have young boys and girls migrating, the women stay back, who have the compendium of knowledge. If we try and harness that, that's where the success comes. We trained them, they knew all the species there, they knew the flowering time, they knew the seeding time. We only give them resources to create nurseries, got them together. At every level, they found that they themselves identified the lands where nurseries could be created in situ between the tidal zones. That's how the mangroves grow. And they knew exactly what to do. We just gave them instruments to check their salinity, the temperature, turbidity, etc. They create their own nurseries, they do the plantation, and the money that would have otherwise gone to the nurseries goes directly to these women. That created a lot of belonging, and they realized that if we protect the mangroves, it not only protects their farmlands, but it also increases their other source of income that apart from agriculture, which is fishery. So that the fish catch goes up. And then, interestingly, you were asking me whether what hindrances. We didn't have any hindrances. In fact, the more you open and speak with them, the dialogue creates a lot of beneficial, discussions and cohabitations. Yes. One thing that actually came up from this project is they came back to us after 2-3 years telling us, you are telling us to protect the mangroves, but we have no other way to where we are dumping our garbage. Why don't you do something about the garbage? So that was, I would say not only outcome, it's the impact of the project. And then we started a solid waste management project there. So this, I think, is the benefit of talking to them, listening to them, and that's what we see in the community. So I have had a very good experience, and I see where Banu comes from, very challenged areas where you really need to work on the opportunities, and that's where I think you'll hear more success stories.
Thank you. That was a very rich example indeed. And actions in a place where really the response is very encouraging is a great lesson to apply to other places, keeping in mind, of course, the cultural parameters and all that, and therefore the hindrances or obstacles that might be in there. Richard, could you share a global example where restoration reduced conflict risks and how that might relate to the Himalayas?
Yeah, so I think there's a good example from Mozambique, Gorongosa National Park. During the Mozambique civil war, it was a centre of conflict. There were rebels in there as well as government troops, and the wildlife were almost wiped out after that. But they took a very long-term strategy to get more wildlife back in. They also got rebels and government troops working together as rangers in the park. So that was a sort of demobilisation type programme. And they've now launched a successful ecotourism project there, as there's more wildlife, and a coffee project as well. So a wildlife-friendly coffee project. So I think that's helped to reduce conflict in the region. It's not the reason, but it's helpful. And I think the key lesson for this region from that and from other similar projects is the economics of it. So that project created a lot of employment, both for former rebels and soldiers, and also for the local community, and a commercial revenue stream to fund it all. And I think those are really the key elements, that if you take conservation separate from economics or from communities, it usually breaks down, whereas when you bring it together, that you've got conservation, livelihoods and commercial revenues, that's when you get the strongest.
Super. That also was a very vivid case study. Rajiv, back to you. How can value chains be redesigned so that farmers capture more value while protecting their land?
Our experience is, though late, diversification. See, when expansion of your area in terms of acquisition or increasing your land is not possible, other revenue streams other than your core competencies like coffee growing or tea growing, interspersed with pepper growing, making use of the shade trees what we have. So when I say diversification, it could be, I think Mrs. Rupa was mentioning about fish. Yes, we have started that also, pisciculture. Because as I was talking about, we have tanks to irrigate coffee to force out the blossom. So these tanks will be idling throughout the year, and it's a one-time use to force out the blossom, since coffee being a perennial crop. So pisciculture has been one major diversified initiatives. And apart from that, number 2 would be apiculture. Beekeeping, our own local Apis serena, has really contributed. At least we can proudly say, though the scale is not there, but slowly it is growing. Very good quality honey we can consume, which is it has become a scarce commodity in market today. You can see a lot of adulterated honey in the market. So that is the one initiative which we have taken, because also literature says up to 15 to 20% of yield enhancement is there in terms of Robusta coffee, since it is a cross-pollinated crop. So bees, as you know, are very good pollinators. So apiculture is another thing. And when we grow coffee under shade, there are over matured trees which are coming in, which could be monetized by judicious felling. There are wind-fallen trees, there are dead standing trees which can become a life threat in terms of falling when the workers are working. And since coffee plantations or tea plantations is a labor intensive industry, so such trees could be monetized. And when you fell, 1:10 is the ratio, you have to plant 10, so that becomes a cycle over a period of time. So these are some of the designs which could be customized to improve the value chain.
Great. Banu, could you share a moment where community leadership transformed a damaged landscape into a resilient one?
I guess in a way, what we are doing currently with communities on the fringe of the national park in Nagaland, the one and only national park, the Ntanki National Park, is an initiative in decades. The Ntanki National Park is 202 square kilometers. It was declared a reserve in 1921. It was then upgraded to a wildlife sanctuary and then was declared a national park in 1993. But in all these years, it never received the attention that it deserved. And meanwhile, parallelly, what was happening was the number of villages on the fringe of the park was increasing due to the unencumbered logging that was taking place in Nagaland. So this area alone was responsible for 50 to 60 truckloads of wood, timber coming out of this area for the past 50 years. So, the degradation is immense, the assault has been huge, but somehow this area seems to be very resilient. It's the last lowland rainforest area, and it's directly south of the Kaziranga National Park, so serves as a very important corridor for elephants as well as tigers and of the movement right up to Myanmar. So in recent times, we have had the opportunity to be with communities on the fringes of this area, where it took us at least a year and a half to actually bring people on board on conservation, what conservation was. They know from their own perspective what is conservation, what they need, but actually what was happening was there was no enforcement of the law. There was no participation of the communities with the forest department. So these were some of the things that we tried to foster and build up. And we're very happy to say that we have been able to bring the forest department in partnership with communities, 18 villages, and the forest department, that is the state forest department, has recruited about 18 stewards, young people from these 18 villages, to partner with them in conservation, and they will be further training them. As for us, that is WCS India, we have been working in creating conservation awareness and also supporting some of the livelihood programs. But actually, we have invested our time in 20 young boys, youth, to monitor their community conservation areas through camera trapping, through bird surveys, through participatory mapping, to connect them with their land. So what we've seen is the first phase of camera trapping that we did in January 2024, and the second phase of camera trapping that we did in October, just this October. We have seen slight changes that we are seeing, especially with the bird life, and obviously also the bird life. And I mentioned bird life, when we entered that area there were no birds. There were like no sound of birds. But today we get calls from the village councils, the chairman, telling us that they are once again hearing the sound of birds. They're once again seeing fish in the river, because they themselves have now stepped up and taken the decision that no more poisoning of the rivers, no more use of battery inverters to fish. So these are some of the slow but definite changes that we are seeing taking place. Thank you.
Absolutely brilliantly described. I got very many images in my mind as I saw that whole restoration happening. I think this is a good time to actually draw in our audience. You've heard some wonderful initial conceptual sort of directional discussions, and then some great examples in various diverse or lens, through the diverse lens of this whole. I'm happy. Is there a mic somewhere that can be? Please put up your hand and ask a specific question. I would restrict it to a question and not a long sort of mini speech or anything. Please address it to one of the panel members who you want to answer the question.
Namaste. Toyanath Gimire from Nepal. So I have the question about Rajiv sir. So here is one thing: coffee grown in shade, like there is the fish farming in apiculture also, in coffee also there, and I'm very curious about that. You know, the instant coffee, if there are any other also plants, like we grow like vegetable or other, because coffee we only drink, we need to digest also something. So I want to just, that one question please. Any other vegetable also can we grow in such a way? Thank you.
See, what happens is coffee is grown at a certain spacing. It could be depending on the varieties. If you know, coffee has got two prominent varieties, Arabica and Robusta. Arabica is for quality and Robusta is for volume, which could be used for blending. So when it is planted at certain spacing and it covers up after 4 or 5 years, so you will not have any land left in between. But however, you can dry something, but not at the scale at what you are looking at. Vegetables could be grown in the peripheries, etc. It will do well, no issues. And even apiculture, as I said, it is a captive apiculture what I am talking about. You are keeping the honey boxes at the rate of around 10 to 20 per acre, so that bees will have that kilometer range, which normally they travel around 1.5 to 2 kilometers from their particular box. So it could be planted. So it will add to your revenue within the unit area. And when I say coffee is grown under shade, there are shade trees where pepper plant could be done. And pepper is a creeper where your vertical space could be used. So finally, the idea is to see that maximum revenue is generated in a unit area. Hope I've answered your question.
Hi, good afternoon everyone. I am from Tejpur University. So, and everyone, like we are speaking about community conservation, involving communities, indigenous knowledge. It's a ongoing mantra right now, as we need to involve community. So my question is, one of the delegates can answer, how do you see the recent Forest Conservation Amendment Act, where we are actually taking away some of the privileges that communities owned after 2006 FRA. So like, what is the definition of forest became a topic now. So who owns the forest also became another ongoing. So one of the delegates can answer this. I want to get some clarity because you guys actually working with communities. So that would be helpful to clear some of the doubts.
Who would be the best person to...
Thank you for the question. This has obviously been a very disturbing development in the legal scenario, and I again speak on, from my perspective on Nagaland, because Nagaland is such a small state, and if this law does come into effect, then we are talking about, if you're saying 100 kilometers from the international boundary is going to be declared as protected areas and can be declared as reserved for, not reserved land, for security reasons, then Nagaland would be left with just about 50 square kilometers, which is ridiculous. So, but then this is also contrary to the law under the Article 371A, which guarantees rights of land and the customary rights over land and the laws of the land are in the hands of the people, the land and the rights. So because of that, Nagaland particularly has almost 97% of its land is in the control of communities and 3% in the control of the government, which is in the form of this national park, the sanctuaries and some reserve forest area sanctuaries and so on. But this law, in fact, is being debated, and we were very disappointed with what the Assembly, the Nagaland Assembly, had to responded to this act which came about. First of all, they ran through many points which declaring the right of the people of the Assembly over the land and the customary rights and so on. Article 371A they also referred to. But in the end, very awkwardly, they kind of like, I can't remember exactly what it was, the wording, but the resolution of the Assembly kind of like rounded up everything and, put everything back, the rights, right under the Forest Conservation Act. So it's an ongoing debate, but it's not going to be, it will not be a peaceful outcome. Yeah, let's hope it is, but I don't, the way that it's going without the consultation, without the involvement, without the information to people, communities of what is going to happen to the forest lands, it's still a bit dodgy. And that this is why also there is a lot of misunderstanding and resistance to the creation of community reserves. So in Nagaland we have the community conservation areas, what we refer to as the CCAs, or the council conserved areas. And these are lands which are in a village, which are common to the entire community, and they can go and they can forage there, they can use their timber, they can go and extract firewood, and then they can also hunt during the hunting season, and not hunt when the hunting breeding season is on. So these are some of the regulations that villages have adopted to regulate their own ecosystem and conservation needs and methods in the villages. But now the community conservation, the community reserve concept is a tripartite agreement between the state government, between the forest department and the village council, and they cannot, if a community reserve is in a particular area, it will have to remain there. They cannot change it. And if it's a particular size, they cannot reduce it. So then it comes in the hands of the government. So there's a big debate also going on about this, although the government would like us to believe that it is all for the better of the community. We really don't know what will happen in the end. And there are very quickly, many community reserves are also being formed. There are more than, I think, 50 community reserves now across Nagaland, out of, some odd 1,200 villages. So it's moving very fast, and we really wonder, like, what will be the end result or the end objective. So at the moment, though, the FCA, as you mentioned, is being discussed, but not at the level that I also think that it should be clearly defined, and everybody should know where they stand on this act. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, here we'll do a quick round of questions that each of the panelists can direct at one another. So I'll start with Mitchell.
Yeah, okay, thanks. Yeah, so this is for you, Rajiv. So kind of building on what you spoke about earlier, what do you think are the opportunities and also the barriers to developing more wildlife-friendly products? So I was talking to someone working in a tea estate around Kaziranga National Park, that they've got an elephant-friendly tea brand. So yeah, from Tata's perspective with the coffee and so on, what do you think are the opportunities and challenges?
I think I would be repeating this answer. Diversification is definitely a major thing which could be initiated. And of course, if tree wealth is there, it could be monetized judiciously. When you cut one, plant 10 and maintain that and see that it comes up as fast as possible. There is I think Banu will agree with me, there is a Miyawaki type of cultivation for tree, so that, since she's from forest and wildlife, I thought that could be tried upon. Yeah, diversification is the answer, I feel.
So there are products galore. I think what we need to finally do is find the market. The market connect is something that is very important. She would agree, because they know, I mean, indigenous people, I hate to call them tribals and then kind of give it a negative connotation. The indigenous people, they have their own knowledge, traditions across. I was telling Richard also, it's such a varied country. So there are a lot of products indigenously that are produced. I think if we find the right markets and connect them to the market, that will create a lot of economic values.
Yes, yeah. Yes, so Rajiv was saying, and maybe branding, and indeed, that's the area that I sort of come from. And I think there is a lot to say about branding. It's not just about, sticking a logo on a package or something of that sort. It is to be able to go deep into the subject and be able to understand that from many dimensions and create connections. And really that is the key, because relationships is what creates the solutions. We began with that, and I think I'd like to leave that as the sort of final impression. In fact, I'll do a quick round to ask any of the panelists if you wish to answer my question, which is that if you needed to leave one thought with the students here in this hall, in the whole aspect of regeneration, where do they begin? What's an idea with which they can start?
Just to touch on the point of reconnection and sharing, experiences. I think I forgot to mention this in the earlier part of my communication, but one of the biggest impact that our work in the last 2 years had was being able to bring village leaders and intertribal organizational leaders to Kaziranga for a 3-day visit. And they went back blown, and in fact the men, some of them had tears in their eyes. And they said, you know what, Kaziranga doesn't have as many birds as we have in our area. It doesn't have as many glorious trees as we had in our area. But we are seeing the deer and the rhino, and they've seen the elephants, and they said we realize what we have lost. And so they went back with that resolve, and they themselves called a meeting of those 26 villages, and then which resulted in the appointment of the stewards, etc. But I think my thought for students here today is you're going to have many challenges in life, and you will have to make the right choices of lifestyle, of products that you choose, little things which we keep hearing in school and in college: save water, save electricity, save power, recycle. These are all such important little signposts along the way. I just want to encourage you to remember that you are not apart from nature. You are a part of nature. So how you treat yourself and how you treat nature will determine the quality of your life.
I'm just going to tell everyone, please take pride in your ancestry. Seriously, I mean, you all have such invaluable knowledge, nature, environment around you. Just take pride in what you have. That's important.
So I always say focus on the commercial business model As much as we need everything else, if it pays, it stays. If you can make money out of something, it'll happen. If you can't, it won't. So again, with the diversification, with the be it tourism or products as well, getting to market, we're in a commercial world, whether we like it or not. So if you can focus on that business model, that can be really transformational.